Allis-Chalmers WD45. Some tractors don't have to be loud to make a statement. They just have to be durable, simple, and ready when you turn the key. For me, the Allis-Chalmers WD45 is one of those machines. It doesn't have the prestige of a John Deere, it doesn't shine red like a Farmall, but anyone who has owned a WD45 will tell you, it works tirelessly, day in and day out, year in and year out. A 1953 update to the WD series, the WD45 was the first Allis-Chalmers tractor to be equipped with power steering. Diesel engines were introduced after Allis-Chalmers acquired Buda and fitted the tractor with a 6BD230 engine. The WD45 is considered by many to be one of the most important tractors Allis-Chalmers has ever built. At the time, it was the most powerful tractor of its size. It was powered by a 226 cubic inch four-cylinder engine, producing up to 39 horsepower at the PTO shaft. For the time, this was a huge step forward. Gasoline or LP, smooth starting, easy maintenance, no fuss. That was what American farmers needed, and Allis-Chalmers knew it. But the real highlight of the WD45 wasn't its specs. It was how the tractor responded to the driver. The Power Director system, a kind of dual clutch that allowed you to switch between two speed ranges without stopping, was a real innovation. It made farming smoother, more flexible, especially when you needed to change speeds between rows or when working with heavy equipment. I remember the summer of 1960, when my brother and I helped my uncle harvest hay in southern Illinois. His WD45 was nearly a decade old, but it still started with a turn of the crank. It pulled the baler like it was made for that job. No complaints. No jerks. And in the hot sun in the field, I saw for the first time the true power of a farm machine, not in noise, but in stability. The WD45 originally cost $2,400 in 1956 and was produced through 1957, with more than 90,000 units produced. For Allis-Chalmers, it was one of the most successful models, not just in sales, but in the reputation it left behind. Many people still use their WD45s today for gardening, light plowing, or simply as a memory. And the memory is real. It's the feeling when you turn the switch, listen to the steady hum of the engine, the faint smell of gasoline wafting through the early morning air, and see that the machine still works like it did when it was new. Some modern tractors may have GPS, touch screens, but you will never find them as reliable and familiar as a 60-year-old WD45. Not because it's the prettiest, not because it's the most powerful, but because it has never let the farmer down. And that, to me, is the definition of a reliable tractor, one of the 5 best ever built in America. Farmall H. If you grew up in the Midwest in the 1940s or 1950s, you probably heard the 4-cylinder engine of the Farmall H roaring through rows of corn and hay. It wasn't just the sound of work, it was the sound of a way of life changing. Among the most reliable classic tractors ever made in America, the Farmall H holds a special place, not because it was the most powerful, but because it was the one that was trusted for generations. Starting in 1939 and lasting until 1953, the Farmall H was international harvesters' answer to the need for a compact, yet highly efficient mid-size tractor. With a 152 cubic inch engine and about 26 horsepower at the PTO, the H was powerful enough to plow, pull trailers, or operate belt-driven equipment, yet easy to maintain, easy to drive, and fuel efficient, all the more important in the post-Depression and post-war era. What made the Farmall H so enduring was not just its solid mechanical design, but the way it served the American farmer through the toughest decades. From the cornlands of northern Iowa to the grain fields of Missouri, the H is still remembered as the tireless red steed. Many are still running today, more than 70 years after they rolled off the assembly line. There are some early fall mornings I remember fondly, my dad sitting in the Farmall H, pulling the starter, and I standing by the gate, listening to the engine roar through the cold mist. It wasn't just work, it was reliability. You started it, and it responded. No fuss. Not complicated. Just a machine that was built to work, and work well. With over 390,000 produced, the original price was $2,000 in 1953. The Farmall H is one of the most popular tractors in American history. But what really makes it stand out is not its numbers, it's its fate. It has accompanied countless families through hard harvests, the post-war years, and the changes of the mechanized age. Today, you can still find a Farmall H in the backyard of an old farm, its red paint faded but its engine intact. And if you ask an old owner about it, he may not tell you much about the specs, but he'll tell you a story. That's why the Farmall H deserves a spot on our list of the 5 most reliable tractors ever made in America. It's not a legend because it's flashy. It is legendary because it did what every farmer needed, and did it without fail. Ford 8N. If you farmed in the late 1940s or early 1950s, you probably saw the Ford 8N everywhere. On small farms in Pennsylvania, dry lands in the Texas Panhandle, or dairy farms in Wisconsin, the gray and red tractor covered millions of acres of American farmland. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was incredibly reliable. That's why the Ford 8N is one of the most trusted classic tractors of all time among American farmers. Introduced in 1947, the 8N was an upgrade from the previous 9N, but it was a huge leap forward. The 119 cubic inch, 4-cylinder engine produced approximately 27 horsepower, enough for most everyday tasks: plowing, pulling trailers, weeding, cutting hay, and operating PTO-mounted equipment. But what really set the 8N apart were 2 things: an all-new 4-speed transmission and an innovative 3-point hydraulic system that would reshape the way farmers operated tractors for the next century. No one bought a Ford 8N because it was fancy. They bought it because it worked, and it worked. I knew a friend of my father's in Indiana who plowed his fields for 40 years with a single 8N. In 1986, he was still using it to pull a manure spreader. No engine replacement. No overhaul. Just oil, grease, and a little love. Perhaps that's why more than 500,000 8NS were sold in just 5 years. The original price was $1,404 in 1952, an unheard of number at the time. Ford had created more than just a machine, it was an icon. At antique car shows, you still see old men standing next to their 8NS, hands on the steering wheel, telling their grandchildren about the first time they learned to plow when they were 10 years old. It's no coincidence that many Ford 8NS are still running well today. Easy to fix, readily available parts, and designed as a pocket machine. You can do almost anything with it, from tilling the soil to mowing the backyard, without the need for modern technology. And then there's the thing, the feel of driving an 8N. You're not sitting in a soundproof cabin. You're sitting out in the open, hands on the metal steering wheel, your foot on the clutch, and you can feel the engine talking to you. For many, it was the first tractor they learned to drive. For others, it was the last one they kept when they sold everything else. The Ford 8N wasn't the most powerful machine. But in the hearts of millions of Americans, it was the most reliable. And that's why it deserves a spot on our list of the 5 most durable classic tractors ever made in the United States. John Deere 4020. Some tractors need no introduction. Just see the green, and you know you're in front of an icon. The John Deere 4020 is more than just a machine, it's an era of American agriculture. From the Nebraska prairies to the black soil of Iowa, it's been used on millions of acres and in countless families. When it comes to reliability, it's hard to find a better name than the 4020. Manufactured from 1963 to 1972, the John Deere 4020 was powered by a 404 cubic inch, 6-cylinder diesel engine that produced around 95 horsepower at the PTO. For its time, it was a formidable machine, not just for its pulling power, but for its reliability. You could pull a 4-blade plow, attach a baler, or run it all day without a problem. That's what made the 4020 so beloved, it never let you down. But what really set the 4020 apart was the ride. It was the first machine I remember with a sound guard cab, not completely enclosed, but much quieter than the roaring machines of the day. The springy seats, the smooth power steering, the well-placed gear shifts. It all made for a working experience that farmers found truly pleasant. And when you were working 10 hours a day in the fields, that was no small feat. I remember well the spring of 1970 when my dad traded in his old machine for a 4020. "This one will last all season with one oil change," he said. And he was right. We plowed 120 acres with it, hauled seed, pressed hay, all this and that, and it never once complained. Every time you start it, the engine roars to life as if to say, "Okay, let's go." Over 184,000 4020s have been produced, a respectable number for any machine. But what's truly remarkable is that tens of thousands of them are still in use. Nearly 60 years after they first rolled off the assembly line, many 4020s are still plowing, pulling trailers, or hauling loads from the fields to the road. It's not that people can't afford new ones. It's that they don't need them. When you have something that does the job well, you keep it. The 4020 isn't just part of the farm, it's part of the family. Some people name their machines, repaint them every winter, dust them off after every harvest. It's not that they love them, it's that they know they've served them faithfully every day. And today, many young people are still learning to drive tractors on the same 4020s their fathers and grandfathers drove. It's durability. It's reliability. And it's why the John Deere 4020 is consistently listed as one of the most reliable classic tractors ever made in the United States. International Harvester 856. There are tractors that do more than just do the job, they leave their mark on the memories of an entire generation. The International Harvester 856 is one of them. It has no fancy exterior, no need for a modern dashboard or electronic sensors. But when you get behind the wheel of an 856, you know you are in charge of a machine that was built to serve, not for a season, but for a lifetime. Launched in 1967, the 856 is part of IH's 50 series of tractors, a line that was considered the pinnacle of mechanical design before the era of electronics in agriculture. Equipped with a 407 cubic inch diesel engine, rated at 95 horsepower at PTO, this machine can pull a 5-blade tractor, operate a hay bale press, or easily handle conveyors and large equipment, all while maintaining exceptional smoothness and balance with a sturdy frame. What makes the 856 so beloved by farmers is not just its power, it's its reliability. It doesn't jerk, it doesn't stubborn, it doesn't need complicated primers. Even in the bitter cold of North Dakota winters, you can count on it to start after a few cranks. It doesn't care if you plow 30 acres or 300, as long as you give it clean oil, good lubrication, and a listening hand. I remember well that in the fall of 1971, my neighbor Roy bought the first 856 in the area. People came to see it like it was a festival. Not because it was new, but because everyone had heard that this one plows all day long and the engine doesn't budge. And it was true. Roy used it for 25 years, never needing a major overhaul. When he passed away, his son was still driving it every harvest season, as if he were right there with him. Only produced for 5 years, the 856 remains one of the most highly regarded IH models in the brand's history. No frills, just good steel, a good engine, and a practical design. Easy to repair, readily available parts, and a chassis that is hard to break down, all of which have kept the 856 in good repair, restored, and used to this day. You might see it pulling a hay trailer in Kansas or tilling the family vegetable garden in Ohio. Or you might see it at your local farm show. The red paint is still fresh, the big tires are muddy, but the engine is as smooth as the day it first started. The International Harvester 856 doesn't have to try to be remembered. It simply served the American farmer exactly as he expected, strong, durable, and never complaining. And that's why it deserves a spot on our list of the 5 most reliable vintage tractors ever made in the United States. Here we take a look back at 5 of the most reliable vintage tractors ever built in America. Each one carries more than just an engine and a steel frame. It also carries a childhood, a country life, and irreplaceable memories. From the deep rumble of the Farmall H to the quiet perseverance of the Ford 8N. Then the enduring power of the Allis-Chalmers WD45, the legendary reputation of the John Deere 4020, and finally the red-hot IH 856. These names are not only synonymous with work, but also loyal friends that have been with us through the seasons. If you've driven one of these machines, or still have one in your backyard, please share your story in the comments. I'm sure there are many people out there who will relate, smile, and remember themselves in your story. And if you found this video memorable, hit follow so you don't miss out on future journeys, where we celebrate the history, engineering, and loyalty of the farm machines that feed America.